I'm Walter H. Washington. In 1968, I came to the University of Illinois as a graduate student. Uh, I was a graduate student, first semester graduate student in September of 1968, and worked in the in education first, and later in the education administration. But the first year, I was a teaching assistant with the physical education department. I had coached and taught at high school before coming to the University of Illinois. The second year, I left that position and went to work in the Dean of Students office as a graduate assistant working for Clarence Shelley. I was responsible for a number of students, and I believe it was between 25 and 35 students that we had to keep in touch with, visit them in their residence halls or wherever they lived, and turn in progress reports on how they were doing. And if students were having difficulties, we referred them to whatever resource they needed to address those issues. After the second year, in 1970, I went to work in the admissions office. I worked in the Office of Admissions and Records for a number of years, and I originally was hired to replace Robert Johnson, who left and went to Princeton University as a graduate student. There was a young lady who worked with me by the name of Dolores Palmer, who was referred to by most people as D. Palmer. She and I worked together for a number of years. She left and went to Northwestern as a graduate student. Originally, I was hired to work to recruit minority students only, but I worked to recruit and admit students of all areas and all ethnicities. So I visit all the high schools with most of the high schools with significant African American population. We later increased the Education Opportunities Program to include Latino students. But high schools in Chicago, East St. Louis, Peoria, Springfield, Rockford, the Quad Cities, Decatur, Danville. I visit those schools as well as some community colleges. We did not admit transfer students into the Education Opportunities Program. That was for beginning freshmen only. The one thing that's important for us to keep in mind that the students were provided services through the Dean of Students office, but the recruitment and admissions and all the records were kept in the Office of Admissions and Records, which was part of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs office. So all admissions, every student who was in the Education Opportunities Program was admitted via the admissions office and not the student services. There were some people who were critical in those admissions who are often overlooked, and those were assistant or associate deans in each of the colleges, some of whom I remember from the majority of our students were probably in liberal arts and sciences, and Robert Rogers was a supporter of the program. Peter Hood, W. Peter Hood was the associate dean, and different people worked under Dean Hood. The first person was that I remember was Kim Delano Cox. They called him Kim Cox. He was very supportive and also very directly involved with the students who were admitted and who were enrolled in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. He could be very intrusive, I guess one could say. After Kim Cox, Later on, Bruce Hanley and then Robert Copeland were people who were the kind of contact and liaison person who, if there were any questionable admissions decisions that we needed, we had to have the social dean or assistant dean in each of the colleges sign off before we could admit the students. Those were the people in liberal arts and science, and Bob later had Joanne Hodges who worked with him. In the College of Agriculture, the first person with whom I had contact with on the same level was Warren Wessels. Warren was also very helpful for the students who wanted to go into any of the programs that were in the College of Agriculture at the time. In education, Brad Hastings was the contact person, and we had a number of people who wanted to go into education. In fine applied arts, it was, I believe, Bob Link. And in the College of Engineering, the original person was Carl Larson that I worked directly with after Paul Parker was hired and was then working with Paul Parker, Dean Parker. But back in the 68 year, 69, 70, in that period, Carl Larson was the contact person in engineering. In fine applied arts was a very interesting associate dean, and that was Emerson Kamick. I think he was associate or assistant dean, but he was in charge of student affairs for, at the time it was called Commerce and Business Administration. Dean Kamick was an opera buff, and he talked about opera and went to Europe each year, and also would go to New York during the academic year from time to time for a weekend to go to operas in New York on Broadway. I believe those were all of the associate assistant deans. There were some other people in physical education. Of course, Earl Ziegler was always very supportive. And I don't remember, he was the dean of the school, and I don't remember the other people who were there who also worked with the admissions office to get students enrolled. Dean Ziegler was not the person who was the actual contact, but he was overall very supportive of what we were doing as a campus at that time. The critical piece, I guess, we tried to work as a team to for the admissions and records people to go out and recruit students, get all the necessary documents, the documentation. Once the students were admitted, we gave a list of the students who had applied for the Education Opportunities Program to the Dean of Students office, and that was when Dean Shelley and later on the other people I mentioned, and subsequently Michael Jeffries would do the programs to interact with the students on campus. That's pretty much a synopsis of that. But I think it's what's many times overlooked is the role that the people who were in the academic offices, and it's crucial that they be recognized because they're the ones who signed off on the admissions and who had to make sure the students were meeting the requirements for their degrees. And that they were also very crucial in supporting the program. If they were not supportive of the program, we would have had much more difficulty than we actually had at the time. That's all I can remember about the program at this particular time.
Wow, what a weekend. The University of Illinois celebration of the 50th year since the Project 500. The acceptance of at least 500 but the admittance of over 500 African American, then known as black, students to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And a project the University of Illinois nor the Champaign-Urbana community adequately prepared for, nor were not fully prepared to receive the impact of what such a project would be to the entire university and Champaign-Urbana community, and later the entire world. So I was unable to record the welcome and reception at Levis Faculty Center on Thursday, September 27th, but quite a reception it was. Pictures can be found, I am sure, on Facebook and the University of Illinois' Office of Minority Student Affairs website. Friday, September 28th, I filmed, as I have for the past 8 years, the University of Illinois YMCA's weekly Friday forum, where the speaker was sociology professor, vice provost, Asada Zarai. Now that can be found on the City of Urbana's UPTV Comcast Channel 6 website and YouTube. During this time, the project alumni were able to tour new construction. Thankfully, they have been here several times before this 50th year celebration on the U of I campus, including, but not limited to, the new construction of the Bruce D. Nesbitt African American Cultural Program, formerly known as the African American Cultural Center, which is located on the corner of Matthews and Nevada in Urbana. There was also a moment of silence for the 1968 demonstration you have heard briefly about in this video segment at the South Lounge of the Illini Union, exactly where it took place over 50 years ago. There was then a pre-Black Chorus concert reception at the Alice Campbell Alumni Center on Lincoln Avenue in Urbana, outside in an enclosed tent. More reflection and fellowshipping was done. Pictures should also be available on the University of Illinois' Office of Minority Student Affairs website. Then the Black Chorus concert, now under the direction of Dr. Ollie Watts Davis, her story told previously on this video segment, but discovered by 4 students from Project 500 and directed by the one and only Robert Ray. The theater department's brilliant performance under the direction of Lisa Dixon, an associate professor in the theater department, also a Champaign native, as well as a stunning dance performance led by Project 500 alum Connie Eggleston, involving young and older dancers under the direction of Assistant Professor of Dance Endalyn Taylor and her young daughter. Wow, her daughter, what grace and professionalism. And then the post-concert dessert reception included more reflections and fellowshipping among attendees, as well as the wonderful and delicious selection of desserts. Saturday afternoon, after lunch, September 29th, provided a brief, and I mean brief, yet to be continued panel discussion of the history and future of Project 500 and more, as seen previously on this video segment. Some history was learned by many, but thirst for more was evident and will be forthcoming. Saturday night, the gala. More, but more to come. Most of the gala you've seen on this video segment as well. You have also seen on this video segment Walter Washington, University of Illinois graduate student then, academic staff in the admissions department. Rarely, if ever, mentioned when talking about Project 500 admissions, but it is crucial in its inception. It is noted that Mr. Washington worked closely with my mother, you see here, Carletta Donaldson, who worked at admissions right out of high school in 1958, retiring in 1995, going back to work in the School of Social Work in 1997, finally and completely retiring in 2004. Thanks for your service, Mom. I then found the time to attend the Project 500 panel discussion with former U of I athletes, the third black cheerleader behind Sheila Johnson and Johnny Barnes, cheerleader Michelle White Martin, Michael Martin, football, and former Cincinnati Bengals player, that's Michelle's husband, and Deion Thomas, who played basketball here at the University of Illinois. This was coordinated by U of I alum Jeffrey Curlers, and I believe he's a high school coach in the Chicago area, and former Illinois football player and athletics department assistant director of development Kevin Mitchell. It was attended by the Project 500 alum who were able to stay later in the day. They were close, and they will be back. This was not videotaped, but there are pictures and more to come with the athletes, their families, the staff, coaches, and more. This brings me to now. Whose side have we not heard from briefly? Someone from the community who was a mailman at the U of I from 1962 through 1999 in campus mail, supervisor 1982 to 1999, became a U of I student, now a U of I alum. He was in school from 1969 to 1978, one semester short of 10 years, going to school part-time while working full-time and actively participating in and raising his family. The first black president of the Service Employees International Union, 119 SEIU, the second black but the first male to sit on the Urbana School District Board 116 of Education, after the Reverend Dr. Evelyn Burnett Underwood, who was the first, one of the Dr. Ellis Drive Subdivision 6, who were responsible for the integration of the Urbana School District 116 in 1966 to 1967. This was the first in the state of Illinois. And what I believe, since 5 of the 6 Dr. Ellis Drive 6 members, as well as a few of the members of the Board of Education during that time, were actively employed at the University of Illinois, how the Project 500 even came about. So, someone who was here before, during, and after Project 500, someone who was on the outside looking in, and as a mailman, he was conveniently positioned throughout the campus to see, hear, and learn a lot about what was happening and the changes at the U of I. No one other than my dad, Carlos Donaldson, who we will hear from now. Now, I did not say finally, or this is the end, because guess what? This work will continue. Educating everyone about Project 500, its alums, and what impact they will continue to have here at the University of Illinois, the Champaign-Urbana community, this nation, and the world. They were all successful after completing their degrees and have expressed a sincere desire to be active in the lives of the black students who attend this University of Illinois and ensuring that more than 500, as high as 750 or 1,000 black students are admitted to the University of Illinois every fall for years to come. And now, my dad, Carlos Donaldson. So now I bring to you Carlos Donaldson. We'll talk about his experience as an employee, as a student, as a community member during the time of Project 500.
I don't know where you want me to begin, but during that time I was all over campus as a mail carrier. Prior to getting scooters and Jeeps, we walked the entire campus. At that time, I think there was probably about 6 of us, all black. My route at that particular time started at Altgill Hall, where the mail room was in the basement of Altgill Hall. I had natural history, Illini Union, Follett Bookstore, which we had an office upstairs. Moving around to 6th Street, there was an office, Capital Programs. It was just south of, north of Green Street. And then I would go 6th Street, past John, which speech and hearing clinic at that time was where the Student Services Building is located now. That house has been moved to Mumford Drive in that area. My route took me to ILIR, Labor Industrial Relations, and then back down Wright Street to the English Building, Lincoln Hall, Davenport House, which no longer exists, and back to the Altgill Hall, where the mailroom was in the basement. During the time of the Project 500, I did not get I was not aware of the first incident that happened in Line Union. That was at night, and I was early to go to bed because I was up early morning. My day started at 6:30, which I was on the job at 6:30. I experienced a lot of the damages that were done in the Line Union. As I said, I noticed it the next morning when I was delivering my mail through the administration building, all the damage that was done to the pictures, the walls. I just not could believe that we would have done this, all of this damage, but it was done by those that were with Project 500. I understand that most of them were arrested. They were taken to those that they couldn't get to the local jail. They took the rest of them to the stadium. All of them were ticketed, written up, or charged. I experienced many other incidents on campus after that time, doing all the burning, the window breaking on Green Street were done by predominantly white students. During that time, field jackets were the dress during those days. I don't know if they were anti-army or military or whatever, but most of the students at the time were wearing the field jackets. Then I had gotten into classes at the U of I. I started taking classes at the U of I because I wanted to better myself also. I sat in class with many of the students that were tearing up the campus, breaking windows, marking windows. They were predominantly white. I said I don't know who they were, but when I sat in class as a mail carrier, at first they thought I was a policeman because I had a uniform. But I spoke out about the damage that was done, and I said, you kids come here, tear up this community, and my taxes go up. Some of them would laugh. But I saw the damage that was done. I also saw an incident at the corner of Green and Wright when they blocked off the traffic. The only black face in that area was me as a mail carrier. I had a uniform on. I watched the whole thing. There was not a black face there. But no policeman came. No one was charged with anything. As I said, the difference that was treated in the white students and the blacks, this is one example. It's hard to believe the things that had happened and the difference that was made. The other incident that I experienced was when this was prior to Swanland, where the chancellors are located. At that time, there were 3 chancellors on campus, a chancellor and 2 vice chancellors. They were housed in the south end of English building. Here again, one black face was in that area. That black face was Carletta Donaldson. I experienced those students running the chancellor out of their offices, which was in the north end of English building, and they stood and watched them just tear up their office from the YMCA building. No policemen were called. Here again, these were all white students. I experienced this, and I noticed the difference of how we, and when I say we, a black person, how those kids were treated on this campus initially. There's a difference, and as I said, there is a difference, whether it be in Illinois or Tennessee, where I was born, between the white and the black population. I think some of the things have changed. We have moved a little closer to each other, but I still think that there are differences in the races and the way they're being treated.
Alrighty, thank you so much, and I'm sure there will be more to come in the future. Thanks so much. And this ends this video segment of the Project 500 50th celebration. Again, there will be more to come. Camera operator, yours truly, Carletta Donaldson.